The federal election is October 21st, later this year. Given this time of fake news and social media, are we in this era of nasty campaigns and mudslinging campaigns? Is that unavoidable, or can you still run a clean campaign, if you will?
I haven't seen one lately. Negative campaigns have been with us for a long time. Everybody likes to pretend they're against them. Everybody also participates in them. We've seen a lot of positioning back and forth between the Conservatives and the Liberals as to who's going to be nasty and who's going to be nice in this campaign. I think it's a fair expectation they're both going to be pretty nasty. You mentioned fake news, and we're supposed to be very alarmed and concerned about foreign agents spreading false news in the middle of the campaign. We may see some of that, but Lord knows we see enough of it from the parties themselves. Nothing new there either. So I think that's a little bit of an exaggerated panic, but that's something that'll be hovering in the, in the wings as well.
They seem to have been laying out the themes for their party and for their platforms already. What are the themes for the Liberal Party?
I think it's going to be continuity. I mean, anytime you're in power as a party, you've got to say, we've been steady managers of the economy, et cetera. They can point to some of the promises they've kept. Their opponents are going to point to some fairly significant ones they didn't keep from last time, and that's going to have some impact on their ability to mount a platform this time. They're lucky, I suppose, that the NDP is so weak, because the NDP could particularly take advantage of some of those broken promises. But that's always job one for any Liberal Party, is first of all to stamp down the left of center vote, to keep the NDP vote down, to corral left of center voters in the Liberal camp. You usually do that by emphasizing how scary the Conservatives are, so you're starting to hear some of those themes. I'm sure you'll hear a lot more of that. But they've had an assist, as I said, because the NDP is so weak this time out, that they may have the opportunity, therefore, to put more emphasis on trying to win back some center-right voters who've probably strayed from them over the last couple of years because of things like the deficits and that kind of thing.
What are some of the things that the Conservative Party is going to stand for? I guess some of the themes that they will have.
Well, we don't know much in terms of what actual platform they're going to have. I assume we will hear some. There will be a lot of focus on Trudeau, because I think the Liberals are somewhat vulnerable there. They've invested an enormous amount in his persona, his image, his appeal. The degree to which they put Trudeau front and center on every video clip and every magazine cover was extraordinary. And the danger, of course, is that if at some point people get sick of him. He's vulnerable on issues of competence, he's vulnerable on issues of likability, and he's vulnerable now on issues of, do you understand folks like me? And they're definitely going to be emphasizing that he's the rich kid from the storied background, and does he really understand the travails of ordinary working middle class folk? And they're going to tie that to things like the carbon tax. Now, whether this is a sound or valid analysis, because the Liberals would come back and say the carbon tax, we're also giving out an offsetting benefit that will more than cover most families in Canada for it. But they're going to basically ignore that, the Conservatives will, and focus on the tax itself, and warn that there's further taxes to come in the future, which is not necessarily untrue. They have the advantage of a kind of a scare campaign that has some basis to it, because if we're going to meet our Paris commitments, $20 to $50 carbon tax, such as they've currently envisaged, is not going to be enough, and any analyst knows that. So there'll be a certain amount of fear-mongering around that. They'll be talking about the border and refugee questions. They've got difficulties themselves, of course, because of this new Maxime Bernier party, the People's Party of Canada, which, while it's not soaring in the polls, doesn't have to. It only has to attract a sufficient amount of Conservative votes in particular ridings that they could cost them a few seats. So they have to be kind of looking over their shoulder at Bernier and trying to make sure that he doesn't expand from that base.
I wonder now, how does the Green Party fit in? How does all of this play out with our current Liberal government and with the Progressive Conservative Party?
Well, it's very interesting, the Green position. They've done extremely well recently in their fundraising. They've got a hot issue, no pun intended, with global warming that keeps coming back. That people are, I think, particularly people who are very concerned about that issue, can look at what all the other parties are doing and saying, well, nobody seems really to have a handle on this in terms of meeting our commitments under Paris, and more generally just dealing with this enormous issue facing the planet. So particularly if you're concerned about that issue, you're going to be giving a fresh look to the Greens. And they've had a series of successes at the provincial level. In BC, they had the balance of power. They broke through in Prince Edward Island, and in fact some polls show them contending for power there. We'll see whether that actually turns out to be true. Done reasonably well in Ontario of late. So they can build on some of those provincial successes. I think it's very important for a party like the Greens. They can say, look, we actually are a real party. We actually do elect people. We're not just an idea in people's heads. And that's one of those things that's always, I think, prevented some people from voting for them, that they feel like they're wasting their vote. So they could potentially, particularly again with the weakness of the NDP, and of all people who should be pointing it out of late, but Tom Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, saying many NDP voters may be giving the Greens a second look this time.